Stop craving female praise and validation. So in this video, I want to turn back the clock a little bit because we know that many men struggle with this phenomenon where praise and validation from a woman specifically is really hard to break away from. And so if we turn back the clock, think about it. In your youngest years, when you were the most, impressionable, who was that role model in your life that you were typically looking for that praise and validation from? Well, if you had a single mother, it was going to be the mother that was there in the household more often giving you that. If you were in a traditional family, it was the mother that was at home with you in those youngest years where you were going to be around that looking for her praise and validation. And now think about your school years. Growing up in elementary school, were most of your teachers female or male? So if you just turn back the clock, and I think this is, really important to investigate in all of our own lives and just think about, okay, why is it that female praise and validation means so much to me? And if you can trace it back and realize that a lot of times in your youngest years, that is who you were working for attention from because that's who you were around a majority of the time, then it starts to make sense. Okay, so here's the second thing. So that's kind of the first little mind game to think about, dependency. You're just born, we're nurtured into that. We have to rely on others. So that's part of us. That is why it's hard to leave the plantation because it's ingrained in us. Now, the other thing is, think about this. Women are everywhere as role models. In your most formative years, the years where your brain is soaking in so much information, when you're young and just so impressionable, we spend a majority of our, and I don't fault women at all for this, I'm just bringing awareness to why women in particular, us guys, have a reliance on a lot of times. We spend a majority of our early lives learning to be good from female role models. In a traditional family, who would be home with the children the most? And if you're in a traditional family, it would be the mother, right? That would be the traditional role. She would be there. So again, you're learning a lot of good and bad. You're learning to get approval from your mother because you're with her the most in your formative years. All right, think about in a single parent household, who is typically the solo parent or the parent with majority custody? It's going to be a female, the mother. We know all that with the court systems, all that stuff. We know a lot about single mothers and all this. So again, who are you looking to then? Your role models are women. You're always looking to learn your dependency. You're looking to learn from others, but especially women, females that are teaching you what is good, what is bad. In primary school or a child care facility, who is typically the teacher or the role model? Almost every time it's going to be a woman, a female. So again, everywhere you kind of look when you're growing up as a young man, we learn to crave female validation and praise. It's just natural. It's just human for us. But a lot of times we don't really step back and kind of really think about that. But everything that we learn, some things that we don't even question, were given to us, good, bad, praised, scolded, and a lot of times these role models were, females, were women. So we learn these rules and expectations about things without questioning them. And this is another reason why it's so hard for men to leave that mind plantation of always craving validation from women, praise from women, being accepted by women. When we were in our youngest, most formative years, right? That's who we were looking to give us our compass about what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. Okay. Actually, I want to talk about this, guys. I want to give you guys a different perspective on this. For women role models being younger, because again, I have a unique experience in the fact that I was a second grade teacher in primary school, which was very rare for a male to be in the younger grades. And there would be things that I would do in class. Like I wanted my class of second graders, I love to question things. I'm always wondering about things. I'm always curious. So I would try to get my class to be free thinkers and to challenge things, to question things. I wanted them to ask why we're doing things. What's the purpose of this? To really have, to think about kind of the goal of things before they started working on them. I just wanted them to really reflect on things. Now, what was interesting to me is, again, I thought, okay, teaching second graders, that's a good skill, critical thinking. Get them to really question things. What I didn't realize, and this is part of why I left teaching, is just there's so many politics behind the scenes that you just don't see. But I'm thinking in my mind, like, that's a skill that all kids should learn. I'm thinking that that's all humans should learn, to critically think, to question things. Don't just do what you're told. Think about things before you do them. Be intentional about things. But what was interesting was then what I didn't realize, was that next year these kids were going into third grade being free thinkers. And what I didn't realize is that would put a what do you call it? Like a spoke in the wheel. It would throw things off for the third grade teacher. A lot of these, were female teachers. But I'm thinking, make them independent thinkers. That's awesome. That's great. That's what they need to do. But then I would actually take some heat because I would get like, I guess it was like kind of a known thing. It's like, I know whose class this kid came from. And it was almost like a look down upon you type of look, because it was like, oh yeah, this kid's curious. This kid questions everything. They don't just sit in their seat and do what they're told. But they had like a negative connotation to it, where I didn't even think about that. It's like I could spend all this time teaching kids to think freely, but now the next year they're in this public school system where you're told not to think critically. You're told not to question things. And then it would get the third grade teachers going, man, you're making my job harder, because I like to just give them a worksheet and have them sit down and do what they're told. There were so many things that, man, guys, behind the scenes of school and teaching and all that stuff that you don't even think about. But that was one of them, because I'm just like, man, I hated not having independent thought and all that. But then when you do that, you instill that in a kid, sometimes that kid gets in trouble the next year when he goes to a teacher that doesn't have the same beliefs as you. So as much as you could be a creative or an outside of the box thinker, when you're in the public school systems, a lot of times that's not praised, right? That's not good. It makes other people's jobs harder. So it's another hard way to get through this, because you're just going to go through year and year and year after in the public schools, where most teachers aren't teaching you to critically think. Most teachers. There were a lot of great teachers, but not most teachers. It's easier for them if you just sit there and listen and just do what you're told. Yeah, public schools are designed to educate girls. I would agree with this. I would absolutely agree with this. The public school systems are set up mostly with how women learn, rather than how men learn. Men learn a lot of times with hands-on, experimenting, doing stuff. But the cool thing is, though, when I was teaching, I would do stuff that would get my men really excited about stuff. But because women are better at just following authority and just like sitting down and learning, right? Being compliant, which is why public schools is set up for women. What I would do is that we would do like grammar basketball. If we're learning spelling or we're learning about vocabulary, I would set up a game where I had a mini hoop in my class, and we would do this little, class spelling thing. And then from there, whoever was, it ended on that spelled the word right, they would get 2 shots of the basketball, and then all of that would go towards our team score. And then when our team scored a certain amount of points, then everyone in the class was rewarded, so everyone was cheering for each other and all that. But when I could motivate my boys to buy in, I never had a hard time motivating women. Women could buy into anything, and I think that's why most public schools, women can just follow authority and sit down and be told what to do, whereas men, it's a lot harder for that. You got to learn with your hands. You got to learn by demonstrating and all that stuff. But if teachers knew, include your boys, get them interested, and the women will obviously be interested, I think our public schools would be so much better. But then again, a lot of women teach public school or elementary schools anyway. And if they think differently, then I don't know that that will ever change, I guess. The P releases dopamine. It does. And even as little as praise from a woman. Think about the sexless marriages that a lot of guys are in. But just getting praise from a woman is what a lot of guys will work for. A lot of guys will just work and work. I don't know if I'm doing anything right. And they're not sure what they're doing. Boom. All right, lady. All right, wife. Did I do a good job? Did I do a good job? She's like, yeah, you did okay. And he's like, yes. See, that's where it's like you're giving all of your validation outwardly to other people, especially women. We understand why this happens. It's kind of, trained into us. But yeah, it's like a dopamine fix too of getting that. Back to the topic of stop craving female praise and validation. What are your own experiences in your life? Did you have a single mother growing up? Did you have a mother that stayed at home with you when you were growing up in your youngest, earliest years? Or did you have mostly female teachers in your youngest years? If you did, share that below, because I think it's important for us men to see that pattern, because that is, again, why it's so hard to break away from specifically female praise and validation, because, again, when we were the youngest, we were just so dependent on others. We were dependent on adults. A lot of times we were spending so much of that time with women in our lives that is something that we naturally, go back to, we revert to. It's comforting to get that praise and validation specifically from females in our lives. Share your story below. Take care. Don't forget, subscribe, like, comment, share the video, but definitely subscribe.